This is episode 5 of Frame by Frame, and we will be talking about advanced edge detection techniques today. But I feel like I should address the elephant in the room first. I got a tripod. The advanced edge detection techniques that we're going to be talking about today have come a long way since the predecessors of Sobel and Roberts that we've talked about in episode 2. So go check that out if you haven't already.
Started from the bottom, now we way up.
We're first going to be talking about the Canny edge detection process. Now this is comprised mainly of 5 steps. We have noise reduction, gradient calculation, non-maximum suppression, thresholding, and edge detection by hysteresis.
Hysteresis.
And edge detection by hysteresis. First step, we're going to be looking at noise reduction, and this is just to help reduce the amount of noise that's in the image so we don't get any false positive and detect any false edges. And we're going to be using the Gaussian filter just because it applies a very smooth generalized filter over the entire image. And go check out episode 4 if you haven't already to check out more about that kind of information and what kind of filters that we can use and why exactly we're using the Gaussian here. In step 2, we're going to be looking at the gradient calculation. That's when we take the first derivative of the whole entire image, and we're actually going to be using the Sobel operator because it applies, again, a generalized application over the entire image. Go check out episode 2 of my series if you haven't already, where we talk about the Sobel operator. In step 3, this is where we introduce a new technique called non-maximum suppression. That's when we will take a look at each pixel along the gradient, and we will check its neighbors and compare the values against each other, and we'll only keep the highest values they have. So this will get rid of a whole bunch of other outliers, hence the name non-maximum suppression. So if you take a look at this example here, the gradient is in the vertical direction and we are looking at the pixels that are along that direction, and you can see that the pixel is comparing its value compared to the one above it and the one below it. So if it has a greater value than those two that are above and below it, we keep that pixel. If that other pixel is not greater than the ones below it or above it, then we set it to 0. In step 4, we're going to introduce a new technique called thresholding. That's when we take a look at all the leftover pixels that are still left after our non-maximum suppression, and we're going to divide them into 3 different categories, one being strong edges, weak edges, and 0. We take a look at all the pixels, and if the pixel is in the strong category, then we will label that pixel as a strong edge. If it is in the medium category, we're going to label it as medium, and anything below the medium, we're just going to set to 0 and get rid of it. We can adjust these values based on however we feel. If we want to make more stronger edges, more defined in the image, then we will set them to a higher value. Or if we just want to allow a little bit more noise into the image, we can just set the threshold values a little bit lower also. The final step is edge tracking through hysteresis. And in this process, we're going to be taking a look at trying to connect all the edges together with one continuous line. So we will first connect all the strong edges together, and then we're going to perform hysteresis with the weak ones. Now, hysteresis is a fundamental concept where the state of the system is history dependent. That means we will take a look at all the existing strong edges, and we're going to be comparing them with the weak ones and trying to connect them together. So for every single weak edge, we're going to be looking at the 8 pixels around it, and if it's indirectly or directly touching a strong edge, we will continue that line. The Canny edge detection process is actually a really good tool to use in computer vision. It produces a very thin line of the subject that we're trying to get, and it's very robust to any kind of noise because we use the edge detection, we use the noise reduction filter in the very beginning of the process. Now on the flip side of that, it is very prone to a lot of being computationally expensive, along with being very hard to tune because there's so many fine tunings with the edge detection itself, the thresholding levels that we have to set, which filters to even use. Remember, we only use Gaussian and the Sobel operators. You can use other operations as well. And it can lead to a whole bunch of false positives that are being detected, especially in textures and different kind of backgrounds that are merging together. Up next, we're going to be looking at the Laplacian of Gaussian operator, and this one is really fun to say, but it's also really fun to use.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Starting off with the noise reduction filter, just like we did in the first one. So we're going to be looking at using the Gaussian operator here. We're just going to apply a smooth filter over this to get rid of any kind of a noise that might be hindering our results later.
Hey, what is up, my guy?
So So the next step, we're going to be applying the Separable operator. This is just to get the first derivative of the image and give us the edge detection and the edge directions of which way our edges are going to be pointing. So the next step, we're going to be using the Laplacian, and that's to help show us the second derivative of the pixel intensities. The second derivative is just where the intensity of the image crosses the zero crossing line in calculus. It shows the edge where the line of pixels will cross from a very low value to a very high value, and this moment is the true edge of the subject in the image. The Laplacian of Gaussian is a very simple operation to use, and you just only use the second derivative, and it is a very quick operation to use when you're calculating many images at one time, but it's also very prone to detecting a whole lot of other false positives in the image because it's such a simple operation to use. As a fun bonus, we can actually take a look at the Gaussian filter that we use in the Laplacian of Gaussian. We can make this operation even quicker if we were to just break up this Gaussian filter and make it less computationally expensive. To do this, we're going to be looking at what's called a sequence filter, where we take the whole entire two-dimensional Gaussian filter and we turn it into two one-dimensional Gaussian filters, and we're going to use them in sequence. We're going to apply them in both the vertical direction and the horizontal direction, and we're going to combine them together in the image. This will produce the same result in the image, but it will make it much faster in computation speed. Splitting up this Gaussian filter into two smaller one-dimensional Gaussian filters will actually make our computation speed a whole lot quicker because we don't have to keep the entire memory of a k by k matrix that we're trying to compute over the entire image. And this is actually can only be done when the matrix that we're breaking up is symmetrical, much like the Gaussian filter. That's why we can use it in this filter and maybe not a standard filter like the Separable can be broken up.